today on the Brett Allen Show. Well, I want to start out by saying it's a very interesting time that we're in. We haven't done any interviews for a while because of the current strikes and everything. So today's conversation, we have guest comedian Paul Morrissey on the show. I'm very excited. I'm a little bit rusty. I apologize. It's been a little bit over a month and a half since I've talked to anybody. So if I ramble on, I apologize. But Paul, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, so nice to meet you too. Wait, so you just been locking yourself in a room? I don't think
Well,
you have to go that far. You can.
I know, right? Well, it's been a bit of a positive experience because I've been able to just think about where I'm at with the show and really just dial it in even better. And so when the opportunity came to speak to you, I'm a huge fan,
Oh,
and
thanks.
absolutely. Well, I love comedy in general, but your backstory is a little bit different, I think, than most. Well, everybody maybe not completely different, but you started out as a newscaster. You were in television for a long time, and then made your way into comedy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like a misfit in a world of misfits, I guess. Everything that I've ever tried to do in my life has been basically a million to one shot, and the I think comedy actually had the best odds. So I'm a 5'9", kind of slow guy from upstate New York in the middle of nowhere, and I became a college basketball player somehow. And then I became a TV sports anchor for ABC, which, if you look at, you know, basically there's like 200 markets in the whole country, and they have what, three stations. So you got, three or
Yeah.
four sports guys. So if you look at that job, that's maybe 800 in the whole country. Everyone's going to school for communications, but how many people actually end up on the air? And so that was a huge long shot too. And I actually, Rich Eisen was the weekend anchor at KRCR where my first job was. And so basically I had his job. And so I was doing TV, news and sports. My love was basketball. I grew up. My dad was a gym teacher, so I just grew up playing basketball. I wasn't very good until maybe like ninth grade, and it started to be like, oh, he spends a lot of time. He's a good shooter, and then I found a way that it could get me to a good college and get me an education, and but early on I was a writer. Like when I was in third grade, I still have teachers come to my shows, and they're like, you used to write plays, like your handwriting was so bad we had to actually type them up.
Okay.
But they were just like these plays of like, going through labyrinths and dragons. I'm sure that it was just based on like choose your own adventure, but I was a very like imaginative kid, and I did drawings that I couldn't do today that I did in third grade. So I was very artistic early on before sports came into play. And so my last year of college, I did a independent study where I just wrote short stories, and that's where the writing kind of came back. And growing up, I always loved Saturday Night Live, and I thought everybody loves comedy. And finally,
Yeah.
my friends like, not everybody loves it as much as you. Like you love Saturday Night Live, like you love, me and my buddy Willis. We actually skipped school. We got permission to go to see a taping of the David Letterman show. Like
Oh wow.
when he first moved to the Ed Sullivan Theater. And so that was when you had to get a postcard. So my neighbor got the postcard, and they were working, had regular jobs. So they're like, hey, do you guys want to go? And I asked my parents, and they're like, sure. And that was, we live up close to like Ithaca, Binghamton area. So we drove all the way to New York City, like two big hicks, and and went to the taping. And it was more amazing than I ever thought it was going to be. It was so much fun. Dave did the whole show for the people in the theater, even the commercial breaks, and the music was great, obviously, with Paul and those guys. And after being there, I just had seen nothing like that, and a live
Wow.
show, not even like a music show. So this just blew my mind, and I'm just like, I just want to be like an usher here. I just want to be a part of it somehow. And so, that was the early seeds of, I think, the comedy thing. And then when you look at it from, I've had friends who are like, well, you were an English major, so you were writing, and then you were a sports guy, so you're on TV. and then my major is literature and rhetoric, so that's speaking. So that's like the perfect thing to become a comedian. And I was like, well, I had no idea that all these things would lead to the next thing. So I just got very lucky that you had to write your own stuff. You had to, learn how to use a camera. You had to edit stuff down. And that's all stuff that you need to learn when you're first starting comedy or even comedy writing, is just keeping things brief. And there was a woman who was in the area and she's like, "You're really funny on the news. You should do stand up." And so she ran the Monday night thing, and her name's Karen Anderson. She ended up being one of the head writers on the Ellen DeGeneres show, along with Karen Kilgariff and a bunch of great comedy minds. And so I just got lucky that I met her. So quit the TV job, eventually moved to New York, and just kind of started from scratch. But yeah, that's kind of how it began, which is, I think, very unconventional, probably, after all the people you've talked to.
Not necessarily. I mean, obviously everybody's situation and how they start is different, but I think like the fact that you were doing the things that you were doing were preparing you for that opportunity. I mean, I'm a huge believer in, opportunity and preparation work cohesively, right? Like it's just not dumb luck that you like stumbled into the career. You were already doing certain things. So when you got to that place where you were given a chance, it worked out for you, obviously, because of your hard work. And that's the way I look at it. I mean, again, everybody I've talked to, it's so special and different in every situation, but you're funny and you have that
Well, thanks.
panache. Well, it's very true. And it's one of those things where it's like, you just what you do. I'm a comedy nerd, I think. Wayne Fetterman called me that. It was just kind of an interesting thing. He's like, you're a comedy nerd, and that's okay because you like to watch it happen, but you also want to know how it works, like how the sausage is made. Because I think what you do is so different than what the average person does in entertainment. I mean, actors you could make an argument and say, well, it's similar in some ways because you're perfecting your craft, but comedy, to be able to get up in front of a group of people and tell jokes and have it either go one way or the other or just hit the sweet spot is a
Yeah.
big risk. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and it's and then I found that, just starting in, I mean, first of all, I can tell you that I would have never done stand up if I hadn't been on TV somehow. Cuz
Right.
what got me in front of the camera was I love talking about sports, so I can do that, but I'm not comfortable speaking. Like, it was a very like hard 1 or 2 years of just like, I gotta say this word better. I gotta look like I'm not frozen in headlight. It was, I mean, you're doing live TV. It's the best improv class in the world.
Yeah.
And so and then when you're, I mean, that was, I will say this, one of the great things about doing TV. I'm in a studio with three guys, or and a couple female news anchors out with me, and the weather person. And so I'm trying to make them laugh, and I'm in front of all these lights and all these cameras. And so when I got to my first late night TV appearance, which was Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, everyone, all the comedians get really nervous because it's like cameras and lights, and the crowd is fine, but they're not used to all this other stuff and having the
Right.
cameras there. But I always had the cameras and the desk, and that part was great. And now I got an audience, so this is even better than it used to be. So I felt right at home the first time I did Late Late Show. That just felt like doing the studio and having a great audience. And I as soon as I finished that, I just wanted to do it again. It was so great. So
Yeah. You
yeah.
had that like extra cushion of the TV part of it. Cause I've heard other comedians say in other interviews, anywhere on the spectrum of a comic, where it's like, you get that first opportunity to be on a television show, a late night spot. And it's so different because it's maybe just your type five, but now you've got 300 people and you got all these bright lights and all these cameras, and it's just like overwhelming. And I've heard other comics say, their first late night like the name comes to mind, like a Mark Normand or somebody who gets that first chance, or a Pete Lee, and you feel like you've blown it because you weren't expecting all that other stuff to add to the nerves that already exist doing what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I am somebody who truly loves doing the late night spots, and that's why I got into it, and I was lucky enough to work with Jim Gaffigan at that time when I was first starting my, getting my, Louis C.K. Dropped out. That's how I got my first
Oh
late night
wow.
spot, because he was
That's a big one.
filming Lucky Louie. So I got to do Late Late Show, and then I did it 3 more times, and I even did it once the day of, where they called me like at noon, and they're like, "Do you have a set ready?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, Jenny McCarthy fell down the stairs, so we need to fill, a segment. So can you be here by 2:30?" And I'm like, "All right." So so that's one of those things too, like always be ready, always have something good. And to speak to Mark, I think was doing his first Conan when I was doing my first Letterman. So we were going through the New York clubs every night running our sets, and so that's how we became friendly. And
Mark's
yeah,
great.
so happy for him now that he's doing really well, and obviously super funny. And those are memories that you have. And also that was the other part of it was, so I worked, I was in New York for a week getting ready for the show, and then I get bumped. I'm actually on the side of the stage, and Regis Philbin is talking, and the producers come over, and they look like somebody just died, and I was like, "Everything okay?" And they're like, yeah, we're not gonna have time for you." And I was like, "Oh, I thought it was something way worse." I go, "So what do we do?" The only thing I was worried about was like my mom yelling, "Where's my son?" or something like that from the audience. But
That's
but
the
they
best.
but Dave apologized to me on the air and held up my album, and it was almost like more of a promotion and build up towards the next appearance. And so I got more phone calls about that and more stories about that. I ended up meeting Drew Carey. I did a Johnny Carson festival with Drew Carey, and I just happened to see him at in front of the Comedy Store when I got back to LA after getting bumped, and he's like, "Hey, how did Letterman go?" He knew I was doing it, and I said, "Oh, I got bumped by Regis Philbin." And then he literally like cornered me and told me the greatest like 10-minute story ever about how he got bumped by Regis Philbin on the Johnny Carson Tonight Show. So that was like, so we got to like share that moment. And then also like, okay, everybody goes through this. Not that I was feeling bad about it, but there was a point in time where like didn't have another date, and so am I really going to do this? And so that goes through your mind too. But once I got the other date, then it was kind of like, okay, don't do this set to death, take a week off, and then kind of refresh yourself, and then do it. And by that time I had done the 5, or at least 4 late late shows, and so I was getting pretty good at that, and just wanting to have some time and get to New York a couple days early. And there is a whole process to it. And so once you learn how to do those great 5-minute sets, then you build towards it used to be the half hour and then the hour. And so it seems now everyone just wants to do the most amount of time they can, and podcasts are 3 hours long. And so there's a learning curve of like, okay, you're going to do a bunch of bad shows, but hopefully that makes it better at the end. So I don't know what the better system is. At least for me, I really I really think it's detrimental to like just go up there and have a terrible half hour and then hope you get 5 minutes out of it. I would rather go up and do 5 minutes and have like 2 new jokes work it that way than like just throw everything at the wall, and get hit less than 200, the Mendoza line. Like I think comedy's got to be really high percentage. You got to be Steph Curry free throw shooting, to put in some sports analogies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting now because I did hear Dana Carvey talk about somewhere he did his hour special for Netflix, and they're talking about everybody has the hour, and then they're like, but you should, you know, instead of using a big close or do your really good stuff in the first 5 minutes. And he's like, oh, so it's still just a 5 minute set then, basically. That's gonna win people over.
I love it. That is so funny. Well, you've done a lot of different things. You've had specials. What are you working on now, Paul? What's in the kitchen for you, comedy wise? Are you working on a special? Are you just doing crowd work? I mean, what's keeping you busy these days?
Oh yeah, it's an interesting time. So the exciting news was I filmed my I've only done a couple albums. Like I said, I was lucky enough to chat with Jerry Seinfeld once, and he always told me the finished product of his jokes were the Tonight shows. He never saw specials as like the final. So if you go to his website, he just has all his Tonight shows. And then
Yeah,
just in the last couple of years, he did those specials, and then so my thing was always like, oh, I've got these specials, I don't have to do albums, or not specials but late night spots. I don't have to do albums. But then obviously that's a big revenue stream, getting Sirius XM and all that kind of stuff, and I really wanted to get something refreshed. Actually, the last album I did was when I did Letterman. So we tried to record a couple times during the pandemic, and it wasn't quite right. And then my record company, Bomb Medicine, my buddy Dominic, we were just like, let's just do it right. We'll do the National Comedy Center is in Jamestown, which is upstate New York, a few hours from where I grew up. But birthplace of Lucille Ball, I had done that festival a bunch of times and met Peter Farrelly and Nick Offerman and got to work with a bunch of great people, and they were super supportive of me. So we're like, we'll do 4 shows in the Tropicana room from the I Love Lucy set, and then we can, we'll just take the best of those 4 shows. And believe it or not, we did one show, hour and 10 minutes or something, and basically that's the album. After the first show, he was like, we got it. And I was like, no, I'm just working my way in. We got a bunch more shows. And then when you listen to it, it's like, oh, the energy, you can't recreate it. There's a lot of guys that do specials, and they do 1 taping or 4 tapings, and it's always one show that
yeah,
is better. So hey, I'm just gonna pause this. I think it's my mail that's going off here. I don't want
yeah.
another
Tom
beep in the middle.
Segura did
Sorry.
that. He did like 4 or 5 shows, and they told him the first one was the best. And he's like, but I want to do these other shows. If you watch his documentary, and then they
Oh,
use
okay.
like 2 minutes from like the 5th show, and then and that was because somebody heckled him. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
but it's great. So it, every comic, that's great, by the way. And we'll put links in the show notes for both the video and the audio version.
Well,
Couple more.
yeah, it's just the audio's out now. Ice Cream versus Everything, which
Yes,
it got to number 3 on the iTunes charts. We actually put it out on my birthday, and so we're super proud of it.
that's great.
We did film it, but here's the thing. So I've done like a lot of work. So January, I knew I was gonna film this thing in March, so I lost 10 pounds. I kind of had my Sylvester Stallone Copland physique
That's a
since
great
my
that's a great pop culture reference,
since
Copland.
my yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, you gotta see it.
That's
Sylvester
pretty funny.
Stallone.
I like that.
But I was a college basketball player, so I was in shape for most of my life. And then when I became a comedian, it was kind of like I can just look all right and still get away with it. And then it got to the point where it's like you're getting chubby cheeks, and then when you're gonna put yourself on TV, especially HD and the way they do it now, I'm like, all right, I gotta get to work on myself. You don't want to, I'm not gonna be Brad Pitt, but I don't want to be distracting. So and Segura, I think, has talked about that as well. It's funny, me and Tom were the finalist in the Maxim's Real Men of Comedy competition at one point. It was a real thing, and the finalists were me, Adam Devine from Workaholics, and Tom, which were all we're buddies, and so the winner got to open for Joe Rogan, and I think that's how Tom ended up meeting Joe. So,
Okay.
so that's so he has me to thank for that.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, Adam and his podcasting crew are going to be here in Denver this weekend, so we're
Oh,
hoping to
awesome.
work on getting
Yeah,
them
he
on the
was the
show.
doorman at the Improv when I was doing
Yeah.
stuff, and he was even, I remember even telling me, like, we're just filming this stuff at my house, like our one buddy's a director, and then we're just filming like us doing stuff at the house. I'm like, all right, man, sounds funny.
Yeah, those guys are
So
the
you never
best.
know.
Yeah, you really don't. And I like their example. We've had his other co-hosts on for various projects, and I think those guys and you are really just true testaments of if you just do it. And I think even somebody was saying recently in an interview that like with where we're at today, which is what I want to wrap with, because again, I know we have time limits here, you have other places to be, but if we can just kind of get a snapshot from you, like the way you got started is the way you got started, and you've experienced a lot of success the way that you did it. But now with Jason Alexander said this with YouTube and TikTok, and not to begrudge on the strike and all this other stuff, but there are ways now to create content, whether it's a comic like yourself. Crowd work is a big thing now on TikTok, crowd work clips, and there's different opinions on that. But for you, like looking at the way you got started versus how it is now, is there a case to be made for comics and anybody creatively to there's no reason to not put content out, right? Like there's so many resources. Is that a fair
Well,
assumption?
yeah, I mean, to finish that one thought, so I lost 10 pounds before the special, and then I lost another 25 since then. So I actually can't stand the video, but I love the audio. That's why the audio came out first. So,
Okay.
but I'm at the point where, so I did the special. I actually just did this Canadian tour where I did 20 shows in like 16 days, and it was just old fashioned, like doing clubs, working stuff out, talking to people, having fun, not being too hard on yourself, because there is a certain thing of like people that are every night they got to find this new thing, and
Right.
there's a lot of pressure, and so you can't live in that zone all the time. And that's why my thing has always been to mix it up. You can't go to the same club every night and, try to impress the same people. I've always loved to travel. I love to work with different people. I'd love to put myself in different situations, like started traveling internationally in 2013. So I did the Magners Festival in Asia, Montreux Festival in Switzerland, and
Wow.
that's like an amazing thing to get to travel and see what makes people laugh there. Is it the same stuff? And just working, early days with gaffing, and now with Tom Papa, working with guys that really, the old fashioned, like, get drunk, during the show and hang out until 2 in the morning and then go to breakfast at noon. Like, that was never my thing. I love writing jokes. Norm was one of my guys. I used to do a podcast with Artie. Frank Sebastiano, who wrote Dirty Work, is a buddy of mine.
Oh
So
yeah.
I kind of love the whole Norm universe. And, I'd love to do, I love jokes. I love to do projects involving the jokes. I'd even love to do like a sketch album at some point, like the old Adam Sandler stuff.
That would be
And
awesome.
obviously movies, and those are like year and 2 year commitments, which can just fall apart. And I know just from working on a couple like sitcoms, like pilots, that it's just devastating to work on something for a couple months and then no one ever sees it. And what did we
Yeah.
just do for 2 months? So that's why we are so glad to have stand up and have this thing that we can always do. So
Yeah.
so that's my my thing. But also, to your point, I'm not a guy that loves doing stuff every day. Like, that's why I do like doing podcasts like you would do, where you get somebody interesting that you want to talk to and do it, once a week or something like that. But these guys do it every day. I just need I love being in front of people to do the shows, and then I love having time to come up with stuff and live life and have things kind of ruminate a little bit, and then when I have something to say, I want to be able to do it. But just in New York City, you do that when you have 3 or 4 spots a night, and you're just cranking out jokes, and to some point, it's like, oh, you're just forcing this, and
Okay.
you need to see how naturally you can come up with stuff. And so there is a fine line between writing great jokes during the day and then coming up with stuff on the spot. You want to leave enough room for that in those live shows. That's why I don't have a lot against crowd work. If people are just doing it for content and just doing it to kind of like tick people off in the crowd and confront things, and that's obviously a bit of a stunt and something that's gonna come and go. But I do I have crowd work moments that are great, and they usually come out of an organic thing or a joke that I
Yeah.
did or something. So I have nothing against that, and I should probably get better at putting more stuff out. But my thing has always been, every couple months, show up and have like a new 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and hopefully people enjoy what you do, and oh, that's cool. Did you see Paul's new joke, or did you see whatever? I like that. So
I love it. Well, again, as I said at the beginning of our conversation, I'm a huge fan. The new
oh,
special,
thank you, pal. Appreciate it.
absolutely ice cream versus everything, available on iTunes and other places too. They can listen.
Yeah, Spotify. I think it's blondemedicine.com is the record company. So it's just, you can click on that. My website is paulhasawebsite.com, which is also easy to remember. That's what I'm on Instagram as Paul has a website, so you don't have to spell anything. And then yeah, just on tour. Like I said, I did the month-long Canada tour. That was Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. Now I'm back in LA. I'm doing some theater tour stops with Tom Papa. We're doing Indianapolis and I think Chicago in the next couple weeks, and then I'm doing some other clubs myself, and yeah, just mixing it up, having fun, getting to see the world a little bit, get some inspiration, and make people laugh. That's the whole
I love
thing.
it. Yeah, Tom Papa is the best. He's been a dream guest of ours for a long time, but he's very busy. But that's so
Yeah,
cool. You get to tour with him. Any
yes,
plans to
awesome.
come to the Denver area anytime soon, or have you already
Oh,
made?
absolutely. We were just in not just, but I say it's like a blur, but we did the Paramount in
Okay.
I want to say earlier this year.
Okay.
I could be lying. I think it was March.
I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah.
So usually a couple times, or the comedy works we're always friendly with. So I do the South Club usually, but yeah, usually Colorado Springs. There's a theater in Longmont as well up
There's one in
there.
Fort Collins, the Comedy Fort. Yeah, that's a good spot
I
too.
haven't done that one yet. I've heard about that, but yeah, I love Colorado. There's a place called oh my man, I'm blanking on it right now. You'll love this because I wasn't sure you were in Colorado. There's a place if you go east. I did this. It was a small theater. And I googled it, and all the first thing that comes up is there's an alien that's
Okay.
like walking back and forth in front of a security camera, like on a warehouse. And then the second thing comes up is the mass tarantula migration, that they have to
Okay.
actually close the highway
Oh
because there's so many tarantulas. So if somebody wants to Google that name for your next show, and you can you can tell people where they can go to find tarantulas if they're into that thing. But
I
yeah,
love it.
Colorado's a great place. Yeah, enjoy.
Wonderful. Well, awesome. Well, Paul Morrissey, thanks everybody for listening and being a part of today's conversation.
And
Be
you
sure to
weren't rusty at all, man. You were on top of your game.
I
I
thank
feel
you,
like you want to
man.
do another show now. You're
Yeah, I've
ready.
got a few more lined up. Well, Paul, man, thanks for your time. I appreciate you hanging out.
No, thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Likewise.